Hi everyone, it's Michelle, registered dietitian, back for another week of our Health at Every Size read along. So after an unexpected, or I shouldn't say unexpected, I just mess up, week off with Memorial Day last week, I'm back to talk about chapters 7, 8, and 9, the next 3 chapters in the book. So these 3 chapters are the beginning of part 2 of the book, and part 2 is the Health at Every Size program. Part 1 was more of why diets don't work, evidence, introductory background information about diet, nutrition, health, and everything that is wrong about it essentially in our society. And the second half of the book is going to tell you what Health at Every Size is all about, why it works, and how to implement it. So Chapter 7 is called The Story Behind the Health at Every Size program, and this talks about the research study that the author conducted. And one thing that she talks about in terms of the background of the research study, getting it all up and running, is the people that she worked with. And this was fascinating to me and so smart. You know, she went to researchers, professionals, people in the health and nutrition field who are obesity researchers and people who are generally pro diets and weight loss, and people who do look at body size as an indicator of health, and these people who generally would disagree with the Health at Every Size approach. So getting these people on board as collaborators in the research study really helps us to know that, okay, this is legit. If both sides of the spectrum are signing off on the study, then we know that it was done as well as it possibly could have been, and we can trust these results as true. So a study was conducted, 78 women were recruited to participate. There were more than that, but a few couldn't participate. They were excluded for whatever reason. They didn't meet the criteria to participate in the study. And it was marketed as a health improvement program, so a lot of people thought it was a weight loss program. They didn't say that it was Health at Every Size or weight loss or anything. And then these 78 women who were recruited were split into 2 groups, and they were assigned either a Health at Every Size program or a traditional weight loss program, and met weekly, were counseled in either philosophy program, and went throughout the weeks of the study. I forget exactly how many weeks it was, but it was multiple weeks. I will find it and I will figure it out. So they participated in the study, and you can read all the details about it in the chapter, but long story short is the women participating in the Health at Every Size group had far better outcomes. They had a better relationship with food. They reported feeling better around food. They had better objective measures of health. So cholesterol improved, blood sugar improved, other lab values, specific health measurements that are not weight, but blood work improved for them. They had increased physical activity, decreased levels of depression. All of these objective measures got better for them. And for the dieters, some of them did have a little bit of that improvement, but it didn't last. You know, if they lost weight, they gained it back, and they just generally did not have those objective improvements. So if you look at that data that we use to measure our health, it's so powerful, because I think when people measure health, they look at all this data, a whole bunch of lab values, physical activity metrics, anxiety, depression, and all sorts of things, plus weight and BMI. And those are just 2 compared to, you know, cholesterol, blood sugar, hypertension diagnosis, A1C, all these other different things, triglycerides, XYZ. And all of that might be great. And then you put weight in the picture, and if it's too high, which whatever, then all of a sudden we label the person as unhealthy. But if the weight is good and those other numbers aren't quite lining up, we're more likely to label them as healthy. So I think it's really interesting to know that all of these more medical measurements of health we look at did improve in the Health at Every Size group. They mentioned specifically blood pressure, LDL, activity level, depression, and then a little dot. So there were so many more. So this chapter is kind of leading, kind of the teaser, like, look how great all these people ended up. Now keep reading the book to figure out how you can do it too. So that's what comes up in the next chapters. All right, so chapter 8 talks about a really important topic, which is one of the first parts of starting to live this Health Every Size lifestyle. And the chapter is called Respect Yourself, Body and Soul, which is an interesting place to start because it's very difficult, I think, for a lot of people who are pursuing weight loss, but an important place to start. And so this chapter talks about really deconstructing and digging into the reasons why you want to lose weight, looking at the myths that you're feeding yourself, saying, if I am thin, I will XYZ, I will fall in love, I will travel the world, I will get my dream job, I will whatever it is for you. And they have a whole list of potential things that you're telling yourself about your weight. And then the chapter really challenges you to dig into those things and identify, are these true? And what is the real barrier? And what are the other solutions? If I'm telling myself that weight loss is the only solution to get the job I want, what's a different solution that I can look at that doesn't involve changing my body? And how can I work on pursuing that instead of pursuing weight loss? The chapter also talks about digging into your values, and are you living out your values by wanting to change your weight? Are you connected to that by looking at your body size and measuring yourself in that way? And it really is a part of the book that just talks about and forces you to think about personally, what are you thinking and saying that isn't true? And there are some parts of the chapter that talk about, ways to change your thinking about how you look, reframing your thoughts, challenging the myths about your weight, and just looking at what's actually true. We've read the whole beginning of the book and we know what's true and what's not true about weight and health and, the things that we are fed, information or misinformation, often misinformation about size. And so we have a lot of power to challenge those things. And the chapter talks about ways to do that. It also talks about potentially challenging situations like going to the doctor and being weighed or getting certain messages from your doctor, and ways that you can feel empowered to talk back to medical professionals who might not be informed on Health at Every Size. And there are specific other ideas. One paragraph talks about loving the scale and how somebody wrote compliments on their scale instead of the numbers, and ways to associate positive things with body size. Other more general things like being present, being mindful in the moment, and rather than thinking about all that's going to come when you look different, just thinking about what's happening now. So it's a really good chapter about how to be with who you are now physically, as opposed to wanting a change that might be just that, physical, but not actually have the outcomes that you're telling yourself it will have. So highly recommend the chapter. Obviously, I highly recommend all the chapters. That's why I'm talking about them, but this is a good one. Okay, chapter 9. Chapter 9 is called Take Care of Your Hungers, and starts to talk about how to eat when you are following the Health at Every Size program. And that kind of makes it sound like a diet. It's not, obviously, that's not what I'm talking about, but this gives you some practical advice about eating, which I think is something that if you're watching this, you're probably looking for. So in order to eat well while living a Health at Every Size lifestyle, there are a lot of different things to incorporate. And so some of that is being aware of your hunger and fullness and emotional hunger and all the different factors that are making you eat. And some of the advice that's given in this chapter is to be mindful of your food. Really slow down with your food and pay attention to, what am I eating? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? Am I enjoying it? How am I physically feeling from it? So that you can gather that information and know whether you want to eat that food again or not, or if that quantity was right for the level of hunger you had. So there are practical tips here about how to eat, how to make choices around food. The chapter does have an image of a hunger fullness scale, and if that's not something you've ever seen, then I highly recommend looking at it. It's a scale from 1 to 10 that has descriptions for how you would feel at different levels of hunger to fullness. So you can look at that scale, and then the chapter also outlines a way to go about food journaling. And they don't call it food journaling, they call it an eating journal, because it's not food journaling like you would on a diet, just writing down what you ate and then probably getting yelled at for it by like your personal trainer or somebody. Not to hate on personal trainers, I think they're good. Fitness is good. but so this eating journal, the example that is here has the food you ate, but also how hungry and full were you on that scale from 1 to 10? What are the other thoughts and emotions that were happening before the meal, and what about after the meal? So it's not so much just looking at what am I eating and is it quote unquote good or bad, but what did I eat? When did I eat it? How was I feeling? And how was I affected? So that you can really make more informed choices about your food. And as opposed to more traditional food journaling, you know, the point of this exercise is to really notice, when am I satisfied and when am I not? And that's another thing that was talked about, is eating what you want. One of the first guidelines is eat really delicious food. Eat food that you enjoy. If you're not eating what you really want, chances are you're going to eat more than if you were to just eat what you wanted in the first place. So if you're replacing, the example was French fries with a baked potato, that's not going to satisfy you, and then you're going to be eating all day because you really wanted French fries and a baked potato is not a French fry. So having what you want and being mindful of it and noticing how it tastes and how much you enjoy it and what amount makes you full and what amount feels satisfying is the healthier way to eat, because then you'll be eating an amount that is appropriate for you. You'll be eating in a way that allows you to really respond to how hungry you are and notice what amount of food makes you an appropriate level of full. And all of this is individual. So there's also a blank hunger and fullness scale, which I love. That's an exercise I give to clients a lot, is, okay, take this 1 to 10 scale and fill it in for yourself. And I would encourage anyone who hasn't done that to do it, to look at the hunger fullness scale that they have, and I'll put a photo of it, and then fill in your own. So go throughout your day and think, okay, I'm feeling XYZ sensations or thoughts, and I'm probably out of 3, and just try and fill in that scale for yourself. And it can help you be really mindful about what you're eating, when, why, how, with whom, all of those things, to make choices that will really serve you in the future. I also want to say, this is my little commercial for Michelle's tie-dye. I tie-dyed this shirt myself with bleach, and I'm kind of obsessed, so I might be wearing only tie-dye clothing in my future videos. This is my quarantine project that has nothing to do with health or nutrition. Maybe I'll see you on Etsy. Probably not.